Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our free sample event for ACT Kaplan Online Prep Live with the ACT and Kaplan. My name is Boris. I'll be your teacher on camera for the next hour and 15 minutes, but I'm not the only teacher here. Still, before I introduce my fellow amazing squad of teachers, let me just say hi. And let me know, folks, how are you doing? Stephanie tells me the chat is online. I see there's a few names here. KT Gator, hello. You are very excited about math, and we will review some difficult math topics tonight. Brittany wants some strategies. Ooh, Brittany, I like the way that you think. The ACT is definitely a strategic test. Chad is curious about the variety of questions, and Chelsea's also looking forward to some math. All right, well, welcome everybody. I see a few of you adventurous folks have signed into the chat, which is fantastic. So Ed's here, and Gloria, and Girish, and Chad, and Chelsea, and some other folks. Will is here. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Please know this is not a one-person show. There's a lot of fantastic people here behind the scenes making sure you have a fantastic experience, and many of them you will interact with directly. So when you type something into the chat, it won't appear right away. That is because my friend Beth and fellow ACT expert Beth is going to read that chat and then push it through. So please note that if a lot of people say the same thing, Beth's not going to let all the comments through. So know that we see everything that you write, even if you don't necessarily see it after typing it into the chat. The next thing is Crystal is going to be behind the scenes operating some polls. When we do questions in tonight's event, feel free to put your answers in the polls that Crystal puts out, and Crystal will let me know what % of folks are voting for which answer choice so that I can tailor my feedback for that problem in my review based on how you submit your answers and how you do on the questions. That's a pretty cool thing you don't really get to do in most school classes. We also have behind the scenes Katie and Danielle, who are going to answer most of your questions. So if you've got questions, go ahead and answer them, or go ahead and ask them right in the public chat. And then usually it'll be one of Katie or Danielle who answers it, although Stephanie will sometimes help as well. If any of you are already students of Online Prep Live, you know that Stephanie comes on camera to teach just like I do a good deal of the time. And so she will also be behind the scenes, making sure that everything runs smoothly, and that if I hop off for whatever reason that hopefully, fingers crossed, does not happen, she will hop on to continue the lesson. So you're in fantastic hands. All right, folks, I want to give one last shout out. This is my friend Greg, who is our technical wizard, and he is going to be behind the scenes making sure that the stream works the entire time and that everything is smooth. So thank you everyone to my, thank you to all my teammates who are here making sure this event is great, and thank you all for coming. Now, we are not going to be able to teach you how to do well on the ACT in 75 minutes. The ACT involves a little bit more effort than that. However, I can get you started. I can start you on that path to success on this exam and success on several of your classes that are left to go in high school and that you'll have in your first few years of college. We're going to review all 4 sections of the ACT briefly, show you a few content areas and strategy areas from each of the tests. That way you can get a sense of how the ACT and Kaplan approach the process of preparing for this test and decide if this is something that you want to jump into and do the full program. If you don't, then you're still going to get a lot of really great strategies and tips by being here this evening, so thank you for coming. All right, we're going to start with the first test of the ACT. Ladies and gentlemen, tell me please in the chat, what's the first test you're going to see on the ACT? So you get there, you sit down, the proctor reads the instructions, and then tells you to turn the booklet and start the test. What's that first exam going to be? You might have noticed it's in the order of these bullets, and the first one is indeed English. So that's always the first test. You can count on that. And that's why it's a really good tip, actually, before your test to read a little bit. That way you can warm up and get into that reading zone so that when your competitors are warming up on their first passage and still feeling a little bit cold and rusty, you're already warmed up because you read some material before your test began. If the first section was math, then we would tell you to do some math problems, but math isn't first, math is second. All right, excellent. I see Christian and Adam, Catherine, a lot of you guys already know your stuff about the ACT, which is fantastic. So thank you guys for interacting with me in the chat. That will hopefully help you learn more and have more fun in today's session. Now, this test is 45 minutes long and you have 75 questions. I just want to add this little detail that you might not know. There will always be exactly 5 passages. So there's a bit of predictability here. If you divide 75 by 5, you get 15 questions. So there's always going to be 15 questions per passage exactly, and you have 45 minutes to get through all those questions. So that may seem kind of tight, But honestly, a lot of the questions are pretty fast, so this is typically not the section that people have the most struggle finishing on time. You got 9 minutes per passage, roughly, and for most folks, that ends up being, by the time they finish preparing, enough time to get through. Now, with English, there's a variety of stuff that the ACT will assess you on. I just want to mention this one thing, which is that this is not a grammar test exclusively. If you approach the ACT English test like a grammar test, you're going to have a few things not on your radar that are pretty helpful to have on there. Because many of the questions will have answer choices that are all grammatically fine, but the right one does something that the other ones don't. It satisfies some goal of the passage, or it organizes things better, or it includes the correct information, or it matches the style, things like that. So it's not just all grammar. You will see a variety of passages on a variety of topics, and you'll see questions that ask you about grammar. We call this conventions of standard English. Knowledge of language, which also falls into the grammar area. And then these questions, production of writing. Those are the toughest ones. Those are the ones where you have to really think about the passage as a whole and think strategically about what the author was trying to achieve at a certain part of the passage. Now there's a great comment here from Sage. Sage says, I'm a very slow reader no matter how much I read. What do you recommend? What I recommend is that you embrace your reading speed. In my experience, 0 students have failed to achieve their goals because of their reading speed. What happens is that once you learn the right strategy so that however slowly you read correctly and you get the right things out of it, you're going to get ahead of someone who reads more quickly but has to backtrack and do things 2 or 3 times over because they're wiffle-waffling between 2 choices because their strategy wasn't there to enable them to get the right answer right off the bat. So don't fret about your reading speed. Don't berate yourself for how slowly you read. Embrace that you are a slow reader and just focus on getting your strategy up there. I've had many students who are slow readers do extremely well and finish all the questions on time just because they have the strategy and they save time compared to people who waste a bunch of it reading things 3 times over or spending half an hour, debating between 2 choices. So let's take a look at something that is grammar. Now, having said that, it's not entirely a grammar test, we know that one of the things that students get the most tripped up on are some of those grammar questions, in particular, commas. So that was what we chose to focus on the most in the sample class because we knew it was a hot topic. We're going to teach you how to deal with commas on the ACT and elsewhere. Now, let me know in the chat if you've ever had the experience writing where when it comes time to put in a comma or not put in a comma, you feel like you're guessing. You ever feel kind of slippery, slip and slidey, kind of yeah, maybe there's a comma that needs to go here. Yeah, let's put it in there. It feels like it should be a pause. And then you get your paper back and it's minus half a percentage point, bad comma, and it's ah. Well, that was something that I struggled with all throughout high school, and it wasn't until much later that I learned that commas are actually very straightforward, and they are used for 4 things. 4 things is the number of things the commas are used for. So on the ACT, in your English classes, on your application essays for college, all you have to know are 4 things the commas are used for. And if you can memorize those 4 things, you'll never have to guess about another comma in your entire life. So just by coming here to this sample event, you're going to learn something that will help you in all of the writing that you do from this day forward. Now, it will take a little bit of effort to memorize those 4 things, but it will be well worth it. So let's review. One of the things that commas are used for is lists. So if you have a list of 3 or more things, then of course you need a comma after all the items except for the last one. So my most interesting classes are physics, comma, calculus, comma, and then we're at the end of the list, so then we're done putting in commas. So that's thing number 1, lists. Now, tell me please in the chat, what is another thing that you're pretty sure commas can do, or another area in which you're pretty sure that commas should be used? Yes, I struck a chord with a few of you about the evil English teachers who always berate you about your commas. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's I look back and I'm why didn't anyone just explain it to me this way? Because it would have saved me so much suffering. What I'm teaching you on the slide, I still use when I write for work. I mean, it's just so easy when you think of it in this way. So one of the other uses of commas is that you can use a comma with a conjunction to hold 2 complete sentences together. If you look at this sentence, I work on Mondays is a complete sentence. Then there's a comma and a conjunction and then we have this phrase, I have soccer practice on Tuesdays. That is also a complete sentence. And I saw this is one of the uses that a lot of you guys noticed, this connecting 2 complete sentences. Now, in between those two complete sentences, I have a comma and the conjunction and. So this is all cool. That's a good way to use commas. If one of the things wasn't a complete sentence, then this would not be the right way to use a comma. Okay, now another way that we could use it is when we have a pair of commas, we can insert non-essential information into the sentence. Now this is useful when you want to add something into a sentence, but it's not like 100% necessary. So check out this sentence here. Azara found, much to her delight, that the hours she spent studying were worth the effort. You too can be like Azara and be very happy about your ACT score after you finish your preparation. But notice that if I take out that phrase, much to her delight, this still works as a sentence and it still conveys the same meaning. Azara found that the hours she spent studying were worth the effort. So yeah, the whole meaning of how it was positive and how it was worth the effort still works. Grammatically, it's still a complete sentence. So here we have non-essential information. And I saw, by the way, that Awkward Dork 09 has the right terminology for this, which is apositives. Yes. So if you know that terminology, that is fantastic. If you don't worry about it. I think of it as non-essential information. And you always need a comma before it and a comma after it. That leaves one more use of commas, and this is setting off a phrase from the rest of the sentence. Going back to this example from before with the I work on Mondays, notice that in order to hold two complete sentences together, I needed a comma and a conjunction. Now, a comma by itself is not strong enough to hold two complete sentences together. You know, it didn't go to the gym every day, it skipped leg day, it's just not strong enough to hold two complete sentences together. But a comma is strong enough to hold together a sentence and a phrase, just a phrase. Like here, after school, comma, Mindy has to go straight to band practice. Notice that Mindy has to go straight to band practice is a complete sentence, but after school is not a complete sentence. That's just a phrase. So it is okay, because it's just a phrase, to use a comma to attach it to a sentence. So 4 things the commas are used for, all right here. This is a great screen to take a picture of with your phone, or it's a screenshot if you know how to do that, and make flashcards and memorize these 4 uses. Then you never again have to guess on the ACT. You never again have to guess on your high school English papers or your college papers for that matter. You can just go down the list. If one of these things is happening, use a comma. If none of these things is happening, don't use a comma. And that's it. It's just a checklist. I'm going to show you now a question from the ACT that has a comma in it, and we can decide using this very straightforward process whether we need the comma or not. Now, as I show you this question, I will remind you that there is a poll available provided by Crystal to submit your answer if you think you already know it. And you might already know the answer, and that's great. Go ahead and put your answer in. However, I will take you through the question. I will take us through the question together and show you specifically how that approach to commas that we just saw can help us absolutely be certain of the correct answer and eliminate that really frustrating feeling on the test, like more than one answer could be correct. Because it's never the case. There's always just one that's right. You just don't want to feel like there's more than one that's right. The greater the pressure from the wind causes bonds to form more quickly at the downward edge than in the rest of the snowflake. Okay, well, we have a comma. We are not sure if we need that comma or not. So let's run through our checklist. Is there a list of 3 or more items? And as a result, we would want a comma for that purpose. No, there's no list here, and certainly not of 3 or more items. So list is not happening. Okay, item number 2. Are we using a comma plus a conjunction to hold 2 complete sentences together? Like a comma with an and, or a comma with a but, or a comma with a for, to hold 2 complete sentences together? No, we're not, because there isn't a conjunction here, so that can't be the use of commas. There's no way that can possibly be the use of commas if there isn't a conjunction there. Similarly, there is no way that we're using commas here for non-essential information, because for non-essential information, we'd need 2 commas. That is a very key fact of that one use of commas, the non-essential information. There has to be a comma before it and a comma after it. So this cannot be happening. Okay, that means there's one more possibility, which is we have a comma attaching a phrase to a sentence. So a phrase, a comma, and a complete sentence. Or a complete sentence, a comma, and then a phrase. That is not happening here either, because neither what comes before the comma, the greater the pressure from the wind, nor what comes after the comma, causes bonds to form more quickly, is a complete sentence. Those are both incomplete sentences. So that's not happening. And on test day, you can therefore be 100% certain that you do not need a comma in this situation. So let's take a look at the choices. Well, A's got a comma, B's got a comma, C's got a comma. It's choice D for nomination. Circle that choice and move on with the ACT. Now, if you think that we picked an easy example here or that the ACT would never do this, I'll bring up this moment to tell you that all of the questions in the ACT Online Prep Live program are from real ACT exams. That's the nice thing about partnering with the makers of the test, is all the questions that we use are questions that were on previous real ACTs that real students really took to really get into college. So this is something that some student had to answer at some point, and they might have struggled because it's a comma and people tend to guess when it comes to commas. But because we know exactly what commas are used for, we didn't have to guess, and we could confidently grab choice D, as 85% of you did in the poll. Very nice work, everybody. Now we'll take a look at one more grammar topic today, and this one is a little bit different from commas. With commas, I was really focused on teaching you the grammar rules. With subject-verb agreements, I am going to focus on something else. In English, it is relatively easy to conjugate, okay? I think that everyone watching me right now knows that I am playing golf, you are playing golf, and they are playing golf, okay? None of you are like, what? Oh, I'm so glad I came to the free sample class for Online Prep Live. I thought it was I is playing golf. Whew, dodged a bullet now that I know it's I am. No, everybody knows how to conjugate verbs. So the ACT is not going to give you a question where it's just trivial to choose the right conjugation for the subject. Instead, what the test makers will do is use this relatively easy grammar topic to test your advanced critical reasoning skills. And I'm going to show you how this can be assessed on the ACT. Remember, these are real questions that really appeared on previous exams. According to geologists, a fossil fuel deposit of truly game-changing size, whether a giant pocket of natural gas trapped within a shale formation or an enormous reservoir of crude oil deep beneath the ocean waves, have become increasingly difficult to discover, if any, even still exist. Okay, we have the verb have. Now let me know in the chat, folks. What is it that have become increasingly difficult to discover? The thing is, it sounds fine the way it is, because the word right before have is waves, and waves have become is correct. But waves is not the subject. Waves is just inserted into a parenthetical. What really have become increasingly difficult to discover is a fossil fuel deposit of truly game-changing size. Now, tell me please in the chat, what verb do we need for a fossil fuel deposit of truly game-changing size? Nice, Catherine. Yes, Grace, Ashley. And Katie, I saw you said ocean waves with a question mark. So that wasn't the subject, but I'm glad you put that into the chat. One of the philosophies that we have is that it's excellent when you make mistakes. We want you to get things wrong. We want you to fall for some, common errors that might happen on the ACT. Because the more that you do that in practice with us, with me, Stephanie, and Katie, and Danielle, and Crystal, the less that you're going to do that on the real exam. So here it's a fossil fuel deposit, which was way back there earlier in the sentence. And of course, that's singular. And of course, a singular verb here would be has. So we're going to grab C for champions, a fantastic choice on the ACT, and move on with the exam. Now, you're not going to see this exact question, but you are going to see questions like it that have a lot of separation between the subject and the verb. So the strategy takeaway here is that when you see a verb underlined, always ask yourself, what is the subject? Don't assume that it's just the noun closest to the verb. Think logically about what the sentence is trying to say and confirm for yourself what the subject is really supposed to be. All right, Girish, everybody, Ashley, great work here. That'll do it for English for today. Of course, you'll have to do some more practice in English, and if you take Online Prep Live, we'll cover all the grammar rules and work on all the strategy for the non-grammar questions throughout the course. For now, in this sample lesson, let's take a look at some math. Math is the second test on the ACT, and it was the test that the most of you in the chat were the most interested in when we asked you earlier which section you were most intrigued by. You're going to have 60 minutes to answer 60 questions, which means that you have on average 1 minute per question. Now, your strategy for that should be that you will answer some questions in way less than a minute, and then you can bank some time to use later on the harder questions. This also means that if you get to a real stumper of a question, you should skip it. Come back to it later if you have the time, because you don't want to spend 3 minutes trying to solve question number 13 out of 60 and then be 2 minutes behind trying to get through the rest of the section. That will only increase your test anxiety. Instead, you want to stay confident during the test, let the questions go that you can't answer, be confident that you've picked up all the points that you can, and then come back and try to beat some of those, brain busters that stumped you the first time. Okay, now math, there's a lot to cover, and we do cover a lot of it. We do cover all the math that you could possibly need in the Online Prep Live program. I've listed the topics for you on the screen so you can see what you will need to study. If you don't study for this test with us, at least you'll know what to review. I will tell you this, though, that for the most part, as long as you took algebra, algebra 2, and geometry, you've probably seen all this stuff at some point. So a lot of it is a matter of brushing up your skills before you take the ACT, or maybe learning something that didn't quite grab you the first time because you didn't get along with the teacher, or because you just had a bad semester or something and didn't pick up on some of that math. Today we're going to review some algebra because that is one of the most fundamental and most important topics. We're going to review some properties related to quadratic equations. We're also going to do a little bit of geometry combined with algebra so that we can cover a broad spectrum of things that you'll see on the ACT in just a couple of problems. All right, so let's take a look at quadratic equations. When you have a quadratic like x plus 2 times x minus 3, you're going to remember that famous acronym FOIL, which will tell you how to expand it. This stands for first, outer, inner, and last. So let me know in the chat, folks, here as we expand this quadratic, what is going to be the combination of our first terms? I love what Adam said in the chat. This is my worst strength. All jokes aside, that is exactly the kind of attitude you want to have as you prepare for the ACT. Don't look at this like a chore or some awful thing you have to do. This is a good thing. You're preparing for a test. You're learning knowledge that will help you in high school and in college. And a really great ACT score can unlock some doors for you and get you some sweet scholarships. So I love that attitude, Adam. Keep it up as you continue preparing for the test. All right, so our first term here is going to be x times x, which is x squared. Then we jump to the O in FOIL, which is our outer term. Let me know in the chat, folks, what are we going to have for our outer term? When you're doing FOIL, you do have to be a little bit careful to make sure that you don't forget negative signs. So the outer term is actually going to be negative 3x because the x is positive, but the 3 is negative. So we have one negative and a positive multiplied together, we get a negative. And then our inner term will be what? Please let me know. Our inner terms there will be 2 times x, no negatives this time, so that's going to be 2x. And notice we can actually combine like terms here. The outer and the inner terms often are like terms that can be combined. 2x minus 3x gives us minus x. And then finally, our last terms will be 2 times negative 3. Remember, that's negative, so it'll be negative 6. So on the ACT and in life, sometimes you have to be able to FOIL or expand a quadratic. Now, we need to occasionally on the ACT do this backwards. So the reason for that is when you have a quadratic equation like x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0, it's kind of difficult to tell what values for x solve the equation. But if you reverse FOIL it, if you undo the FOILing process, it will be very easy to tell what values of x solve it. So what you want to do in this case is look for 2 magic numbers. The 2 magic numbers will need to multiply to give you the number on the outside, in this case, 6. And they will need to add to give you the number in the middle, which in this case is 5. Now, by the way, I just want to say a lot of you guys are participating in the chat. We have such great participation here. So Luke, Dominique, and Brandon, Sophia, thank you guys so much for working with me in the chat. I like that you're taking a hands-on approach and improving your performance. Now let me know in the chat, what are those two magic numbers that add to 5 and multiply to 6? 5 being the number in the middle, and 6 being the number on the end. It can get a little bit tricky when you have negatives and stuff, but here everything's positive, so yeah, Grace. We're just looking at 3 and 2. 3 plus 2 is 5, 3 times 2 is 6, so we've hit the jackpot. That means that the reverse FOIL is x plus 2 and x plus 3. And if this equals 0, we can now tell what x is. Let me know in the chat what's one of the two possible values x could be that would solve this equation. Nice. We stick some negative signs in front of those 2's and 3's, and then there we go. If x is negative 2, then x plus 2 is 0, and 0 times anything is 0. If x is negative 3, then negative 3 plus 3 is 0, and 0 times anything is 0. So negative 2 and negative 3 are the possible solutions, and those are very evident when we take the time to reverse FOIL the quadratic. So that's what you'll see on the ACT. Some questions where you need to FOIL, and then some questions which are a quadratic equal to 0 that you actually want to solve by reverse FOILing. We're going to see one of those right now. What is the sum of the two solutions for x in the quadratic equation blibbity blah? All right, so this is a situation where you want to reverse FOIL. It's already expanded, but in the expanded form, it's a little bit difficult to tell what x could be. So I want to undo the expansion. I want to reverse FOIL. Now, Katie says, I'm so confused in the reverse FOIL. It is not an easy topic, Katie, so I hope you don't beat yourself up over it. It definitely is something that takes some practice to get the hang of. And here we're going to get a little bit more practice together. We want to find two magic numbers. Those two magic numbers should multiply to give us the number on the outside, which here you can see is negative 56. Those two numbers should also add to give us the number in the middle. Now, in this case, the number in the middle is 1. There's just like a 1, kind of a ghost 1. In front of that x. So we ask ourselves, what are those two magic numbers that multiply to get to negative 56, but when you add them together, give you just a single 1? You have to be very careful here because the 56 is negative, so it's like, which of my numbers is supposed to be the negative one? Here we want it to be positive 8 and negative 7, because positive 8 times negative 7 is negative 56, and positive 8 plus negative 7 is positive 1, which is the number in the middle. So that's good. Now, this is what you do once you find those two magic numbers. You just reverse FOIL it, and in the blanks, where you have parentheses x blank, parentheses x blank, you put those two magic numbers, a negative 7 in one place and a positive 8 in the other. Okay, and now we can tell what the possible values of x are, right? If x is 7, this will be equal to 0. If x is negative 8, this will be equal to 0. But that's two answers, and we only want a single answer. Let me know in the chat, folks, what do we need to do with these numbers, the 7 and the negative 8, in order to answer the question that the ACT has asked? Oh, hey, I see some light bulb moments happening. Chad's got it. Brandon's got it. Yes! One thing that I stress to all my students whenever I teach math is that no matter what your history with math has been, you got to give yourself a chance on the ACT. I know it can be really frustrating in high school math class, and sometimes math class makes us feel dumb, like we can never get it, and that it's just hopeless. But the ACT is more of a critical reasoning test than a math test. I mean, yes, you do need to know some math, but most of the math is at a fundamental level, and then the challenge of the questions comes from critical thinking skills and logic and strategy. So you can maybe learn like the really fundamental math, even if stuff you did in school was much harder, and then apply it on the ACT and get these questions right. Give yourself a chance to succeed. Don't knock yourself out before you go into the ring. So here, Dominique, yeah, we have to add these numbers because it says what is the sum of the two solutions. And sum of the two solutions means that once I find my two solutions, I add them together. So you have to be careful here because now what we're doing is positive 7 plus negative 8, which is negative 1. So here, initially, we were at about 50% voting for C, but now it's getting closer to 81%. We're going to grab this choice, another C for champions, and move on with the ACT. D is a mistake that some folks might make because that is negative 7 plus positive 8. And that's what we did initially. And then B and E are both tempting choices because those choices are the different solutions for X. So one thing that we stress is that whenever you're about to commit an answer on a math problem, always check to make sure that you have really and truly answered the question. Having that habit be second nature on test day will allow you to avoid a lot of silly mistakes, and you'll feel very, very happy about that at the end of the day when you get your score. Okay, so that was a quick flash review of some quadratics. Let's take a look at triangles, because when ACT tests geometry, triangles are the most commonly shaped that is tested. So there are 3 facts that I'm going to review with you about triangles, and we're going to focus on one of them in the question that we do. So of course, in the full program, we would go through this a little bit more, but I will review some properties with you that will help you on your test, and we'll do one in more depth as a practice question. The angles of a triangle add up to 180. The area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. And when you have a right triangle, there's the Pythagorean theorem, which I bet you probably remember. It's a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c is the hypotenuse, meaning the longest leg of the right triangle. So those are some of the most important properties that you need to know for the ACT. And we're going to focus today on the first one, and we'll see how, even though it's a very fundamental property, even though it's a very basic fact, the ACT will use it to assess your critical thinking skills. So you learn a little bit of math, and then you practice a lot of strategy, and you can get a really great score on the ACT math test, even if math is, shall we say, your worst strength. It's not something that needs to be a low score for you on your real ACT. What is the degree measure of the smallest interior angle of triangle DEF below? And there we have a picture. We have all the angles measured. Now let me know in the chat, strategically, what do you reckon you should do to get one step closer to solving this problem? Well, we know that the angles of a triangle add up to 180, and we have all of these angles labeled. So it would appear that if we added all 3 of these expressions together, we should get 180. In the math that has just appeared on the screen, that is all that I have done, is I've just taken the 3 angle labels that are in the diagram that was given to me, I have added them together, and I know that that has to equal 180 degrees. Now at this point, it's just a little bit of elementary algebra. Let me know in the chat, when I combine my like terms for x's, how many x's do I get? Nice, Madison, Grace, fantastic. You guys are on it today. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and say, look, x, 2x, 4x are my like terms. I can combine them and get 7x. And then 16 plus 15 is 31. 31 plus 2 is 33. So we've got a situation here, 7x plus 33 equals 180. And this is algebra that I know you could do in your sleep. You say, okay, I subtract 33 from both sides, I subtract 7x, and then I divide both sides by 7, and then I get x all by itself. Folks, fantastic work here. So we divide both sides by 7, and we get x equals 21. Okay, are we done with the question when we have it that x equals 21? Oh man, the participation in the chat is phenomenal. I love it when a class comes, and even though it's like a ACT preparation event on a night in August, and I know you could have been playing video games right now, but you're here and you're actually like really, really active, and we really appreciate that. So thank you guys so much for making this fun for us as well as productive for you. Yeah, we're not done. Choice A is here, and this would be a mistake. And I know that a lot of people get frustrated by choices like A. You want to shake your fist at the heavens and be like, ACT! But the thing is, you don't want to get mad that there are choices like that, because someone else is going to pick that choice. Not you, right? You're not going to pick that choice because you're getting that practice out of your system. You're getting that mistake out of your system by working ahead of time to do well in the ACT. You want there to be choices like that, because if that wasn't one of the choices, then one of your less prepared competitors who didn't work as hard as you did before taking the test would be like, oh, gee, that's not there, huh? What did I miss? Oh, I see. I need the smallest interior angle. Oh, good thing 21 wasn't one of the choices. And they might get the question right, just like you, and then you don't get a higher score. But if your competition is missing this question because of that answer choice, you're going to have some questions that you get right that other people don't, and that's how your score goes up. So embrace these mistakes. Be excited when you make them, because that's only going to help you be a stronger test taker on the real deal. We want the smallest angle. Now, which of these angles, just by eyeballing, which of these angles do you reckon is the smallest one? Katie asked an amazing question. I mean, do you need to plug x into the equations and find the smallest one? And you could, but I have good news. You don't need to. Because eyeballing can tell you that, look, if I take x and multiply it by 4 and add 16, or if I take x and double it and add 15, clearly that's going to get me way above just adding 2, right? Like if I just add 2 to x, it's not going to be as good as doubling it or quadrupling it and adding a bigger number. So you guys are absolutely right. E has to be the smallest angle. So all we have to do is add 2 to x. All right, we do 21 plus 2 and get 23. That is choice B for Boris, in my extremely humble opinion, the greatest ACT answer choice of all time. Circle that choice and move on with the exam. Girish, David, Sophia, Trey, Brandon, great work, everybody. Thank you so much for your participation here. And you guys see how this works to get you, closer to your dream score on the ACT. I know it's frustrating. I know you might be like, all I had to do was add 2 and I got it wrong. But you did that in practice. And there's a huge difference between making a mistake in practice that reinforces the right strategy on test day, which is to always make sure you're done with the problem, and making that mistake on test day like a lot of your competitors will. Sage asks, isn't it always good to plug x into everything just in case something isn't decided? That's a great question. And it depends on the kind of test you're taking. If you have a test where you've got tons of time, absolutely, it is good to be double, triple checking your work. However, on the ACT, we got a minute per problem. So at that point, it does not become a worthwhile trade-off. It's better to make a mistake every once in a while, but get through the whole section and have more energy left over for the remaining sections than it is to double check and triple check and do all your work multiple times over, which will drain you of time and energy and overall lower your performance than a once in a while mistake would have. That is a great question, Sage. It tells me that you're thinking like a strategic test taker. Okay, well, that'll do it for math for today. I will move next into the reading test. And this is a test that I love to teach because it's one of the ones that people are the most hopeless about, and also one of the ones that people see some of the biggest improvement on after they try the approaches that we teach. This is a test where it's very difficult to finish on time. You only have 35 minutes to answer 40 questions. So that's less than a minute per question. And on top of that, that's not even counting reading the passage. So if you're someone who is afraid of being a slow reader, you might be really concerned about your ability to read 4 passages and answer 40 questions in 35 minutes. I'm going to show you tonight that your reading speed is not holding you back. It makes no difference how quickly or slowly you read. What you have to do is read the right way. If you read the wrong way, you can read as fast as you like, and all you're going to do is make all the same mistakes. We're just going to make them faster. Whoop-de-doo. You want to learn how to read better so that you can only read the passage once, and when you look at the answer choices, you find the right choice immediately and pick it. We've all done it. All right, I've done it. You've done it. We've all done it where we're like, oh, it's B. Oh, no, but what about C? Oh, geez, both these choices look good. Oh, man. Oh, this test is so annoying. Ha-da-da-da-da. And it's like there's one right answer, and if you have the right approach, you can find that answer and not be tempted by any of the wrong answers and quickly move on, even if your literal reading speed is not up there. So let me show you the strategy that you can practice beginning today and eventually start to see that your reading speed is not the big deal, but rather your ability to read a passage strategically. Our goal when we read on the ACT is to look for main points. We want the main point of the passage. We want the main point of each paragraph. What we don't want is the details. And this extremely simple idea is something that will set you apart from almost everybody else taking the ACT. Because when the vast majority of people read a passage, what are they trying to do? They're trying to memorize every single detail. They're trying to understand all the difficult science of the passage or all the linguistic theory of the passage or whatever, and really figure out everything that's happening. And their brains get overwhelmed because these passages are fairly technical. They are a little bit dense, maybe even a little bit boring at times. And all that makes it hard to pay attention. If you've ever taken a practice test, you know how hard it can be sometimes to stay awake. You zone out, you lose focus. You get to the end of a paragraph and you're like, oh, my eyes were moving, but my brain was dead. And now you have to go up to the beginning of the paragraph and read it all over. Well, this is why if you read well, you can read slowly and still be way ahead of your competition if you're not rereading the entire passage. And if you actually understand it instead of feeling overwhelmed by it, then you can get through it. So focus on the main points. Do not focus on the details. Now that doesn't mean that you can skip around. I mean, you should read the whole passage, but you should pay attention selectively. Only pay attention to the really important parts. Everything else that's not contributing to the main point, you can just not pay attention to. So I'm going to show you how that works. This passage that we're about to do is not a whole passage. It's not a full-length passage. That would take a very long time here. But it will be enough to show you how from a real passage that really appeared on the ACT, or a truncated portion of a passage that really appeared on the ACT, just paying attention to the main point is enough to get the questions right. And then if you need more details, you can go back and do the research later. So let's take a look. This passage says, this passage is adapted from an essay on handedness in vertebrates. Whoa! Oh, sure, I'm glad I read that blurb up at the top, because that told me the topic. Tell me please in the chat, what is the topic or the broad subject that this passage will focus on? This passage is about handedness in vertebrates. Okay, so I'm going to make a quick note here. Handedness. And by the way, you should write this. You should make some notes in the margin of the paragraph. I know you're like, oh, notes? Whoa. I mean, the timing is tough. Do I really have time to take notes? We're talking very short notes, just a few words per paragraph. It takes seconds, and it makes sure that you get what's happening. It makes sure that you are understanding the main point. It's very easy to say to yourself, oh yeah, I get it, and then you get to the questions and you're like, I don't get it. So by synthesizing the main idea of a paragraph into a word or two, you ensure that you really do understand what you're going on. Okay, so we're talking about handedness. Now, let's start to read the passage and see what the main point of the first paragraph is. In the past, scientific consensus was that separation of functions within the brain, each hemisphere being responsible for certain tasks but communicating with each other for others, was a uniquely human trait. About 90% of all humans are right-handed, implying that the dominant hemisphere for most humans' motor functions is the left side. Okay, so there's a whole lot of science in here, my goodness. Someone trying to understand all the science, if they're not a big science fan, is going to be like, and just like fall asleep. But you're just looking for the main point. Okay, so handedness hasn't been mentioned that much yet. What is the author talking about as this passage opens? We just want to get the topic just so that we know where to go back and look for more information if a question asks for a detail. Sage. Ah, yes, good old handedness, my favorite topic. I know. One of the things that really helps with the strategy that we teach is that when you're actively reading, when you're asking yourself like, what's the main point? How can I sum up this paragraph? What's the passage likely to do next? It kind of makes every passage fun, and so you can at least stay active and not fall asleep as you're reading through these. So here we get the topic of brain separation. So we know that the first paragraph is a good paragraph to go back to if there are ever any questions about brain separation or handedness. We get some background information here. Katie puts it very nicely, separation of brain functions. That's perfect. Okay, so now let's take a look at the rest of the paragraph. Researchers have observed this tendency at all stages of life, even prior to birth. Clearly there's some kind of genetic predisposition involving the separation of the hemispheres. Okay, so still talking about separation of hemispheres. All right, I'm still on topic. One may ask whether this separation is found similarly in all animals. Okay, so the author has a question here, and that's going to lead us to the author's main point, so we should take a note of it. Let me know in the chat, folks, what is the author wondering about that I think was the reason for the author to sit down and write this passage in the first place? Yeah, the author says, we can ask if this separation is in animals. So we can say something like animals too, ? You could have written something like just humans, ? There may be multiple ways to annotate a passage. Please don't think that, if your way of noting it is not the way that I put up on the screen, that your way is wrong. It's not like math here. This is an art as much as a science. You want your words that you write to enable you to remember for the next like 8 or so minutes what the topics were that were discussed and give you some idea of the main point of the passage. So yeah, Sam, if animals are right-handed too. Gloria, are animal brains separated? Exactly. So that's what the topic of this passage is. And you're going to learn to love questions when the author asks a question, because now before you even read the next paragraph, you know exactly what the author is going to do in that next paragraph. The author is going to tell you if animals also have brain separation. And your competition is not thinking on this level. Your competition is like in, coma mode because their brains were overloaded with all the science in this paragraph. You don't care about the science. You can look up the science later if a question asks. And if no question ever asks, thank goodness you didn't waste any time reading about it and trying to understand it. You just know that this passage is about brain separation and handedness, and the author's wondering if animals have that as well. So let's look, and now we have a task. We're trying to find actively as we read this paragraph, do animals also have it? So let's see. The evidence that a left-brained, right-handed preference for everyday activities occurs in nearly all vertebrates is mounting and substantiates the notion of a genetic component to the differentiation of brain hemispheres. Okay. Wow. Thanks, author. You answered your own question in the very next sentence. That means I have to work a lot less hard to figure out what's happening. Guys, let me know in the chat. Do animals also have brain separation? Yep, they got them. And you can write this probably in an even shorter way than animals too, but I'll just really spell it out so that my type notes are as clear as possible. Yeah, animals also have it. Then, in the 5th line of this paragraph, the author throws out the word however. Now, this is a contrast word and often leads to something interesting. So at this point, you want to perk up and pay attention because maybe another main point is coming. No animal has shown as extreme a preference as humans. All right, so Jordan, Adam, Trey, Sage, everybody, thank you so much for participating in the chat. Let me know this. What's special about humans? Because we learned that humans have brain separation and animals have brain separation. But then we learned that something about humans is special. So what is it that's special about us? We learned that humans are extreme. So maybe animals do have the separation just like us, but we're like super extreme about it. And then it says, this disparity is probably due to a combination of factors. Now, I don't care about any of the details in the second half of this paragraph. I really could not care less. But I want to know what the author is doing here. Tell me please in the chat, when the author leads in with, this disparity is probably due to a combination of factors, what is the author going to do from that point on? Nice. Yeah, what the author's going to do is explain it. So you don't need to make any more notes about it. The author's just going to throw a bunch of science at your face and explain why humans are extreme. So if a question asks about it, then you can go and read about it. But if a question never really asks or cares about why humans are extreme, then it's a good thing that you didn't really care about this much and didn't pay that much attention to it. So you read, but don't let it overwhelm you. As long as you get the main idea of the paragraph, you can ignore all the details. So let's take a look. Most likely, the use of tools and the continued reliance on fine motor skills for the everyday tasks of humans forced the right-handed preference to become increasingly favored. Genetics may have started humans on the path to left brain dominance, but other factors must have been important to produce the extreme bias that we see in human brains today. Okay, so we get some factors, a list. It's not just one thing, it's several things. We don't care what they are. We read it. It's rattling around in our heads. If a question asks, we can go back and look it up more later. Okay, so now let's take a look at some questions and see how we can confidently pick out an answer. I know that a lot of students come into my classes utterly convinced that the ACT has multiple correct answers on reading questions all the time. All the time there's a good answer and a better answer, or a right answer and a more right answer. I challenge you from this day forward to discard that belief. That just means that you're missing something if you think that. There's one right answer and the other three are absolutely in a vacuum wrong. And you will start to see that more and more and be more and more confident about it, the better that you understand the main points as you read the passage. So let's take a look. The main point of the passage is, okay, well, let's take a step back. Before looking at the answer choices, remind me in the chat, like, what was the main point of the passage overall? Jordan says, what if you get too interested by it and end up reading it all? Well, you'll want to read it all anyway. You just won't pay as much attention if you're not as interested in it. If you are interested in it, that is a good thing because it's going to be easier for you to pay attention without losing focus. So interest is always a plus, but we have good strategies to work around it if you aren't interested in the passage. Okay, so the point of this passage seems to be to talk about a few things. Number one, humans have a brain separation, animals have a brain separation, and then like, why does brain separation happen? So those are kind of like the three things that this passage did. So we're going to take a look at the answer choices, and you can vote in the poll that Crystal has prepared. Pick the answer choice, and the only answer choice that captures one of those main points, that humans and animals have separation, and there are several reasons why it happens. A lot of these choices are way off. The only one that even comes close to saying anything that we saw in the passage was choice B for Boris. We're going to circle this choice and move on with the test. The author never said that we cannot understand brain chemistry if we don't study handedness, so A is out. Choice C says all, which is extreme and way too specific to be the main point of the passage, so C is out. And then choice D says that genetic factors don't matter, but the passage said that the genetic factors do matter, so we can get rid of choice D. Only one choice makes any sense. We're going to grab B for Boris and get out of here. Let's take a look at a slightly more challenging question. This would be a high-end difficulty question that we're going to see next. It can be inferred from the passage that no species has ever displayed. Okay, so the word inferred means that you have to make some deductions, figure some things out for yourself. It won't just be written directly in the passage. So that's part of what makes this question challenging. The other part is that it's a little bit vague and doesn't give you much to go on. So you kind of have to dive in and look at each choice and figure out if that choice is true. You can't really like predict an answer off the top of your head. So let's do it. Let's dive into choice A. Folks, can we deduce from the passage that we just read that no species ever has displayed a preference for left-handedness? Is that something that we can confidently say must be true given the passage? Yeah, that would be a little bit extreme, right? I mean, we know that it said most species were right-handed, but we don't know that all of them have a preference for the right hand. So A is a little bit off the charts. Let's go ahead and get rid of it. Now let's take a look at B. And I'm going to be honest with you. Off the top of my head, I don't know if B is the right answer when I read this the first time. I don't know. I mean, maybe, maybe not. So what I have to do is do some research to check choice B. And the most important part of choice B is this number, 95%. Now let's take a look back in the passage. All right, if we look back at the passage, tell me please in the chat, where do we get some number of that tells us about handedness? Because if there's no numeric information anywhere in this passage, then that will have to be the wrong answer, because we won't be able to prove anything about the numbers. But if there is some numeric information, then B has a chance of being the right answer. And here we do have some numbers. We know that 90% of all humans are right-handed. Okay, so humans have a 90% preference for the right hand. Remind me in the chat, what else did we learn about humans? Here we learned that 90% are right-handed, which many of you have put into the chat, so thank you guys so much for getting that answer in there and for looking it up in the passage. And what did we learn about humans in the second paragraph? Here, because we paid attention to the main points, we actually noted that humans are extreme. There has never been an animal, ever, to have as extreme a preference as humans. Okay, so let's put these facts together. We know that humans have a 90% preference, and we also know that humans are as extreme as it gets. So is it possible that there was ever a species that had a 95% preference? Grace, Dominique, exactly, Trey. Yep, you guys found the right facts. Yeah. If humans are as extreme as it gets, and humans are at 90, then there's no way that any animal has ever been above 90. So B has to be the right answer. It must be true indeed that no species has ever displayed a 95% preference, because if any of them did, it would have been the really extreme one. Humans would not have been as extreme. Humans would not have been at the top of the extreme chart. And honestly, on test day, just circle B and move on. I mean, not only is it B for Boris, so it feels good, but that way you can save time not looking at C or D. And you might be thinking, whoa, Boris, that's totally crazy. I mean, how can you possibly do that? I'm always going to read C or D just to make sure. But then I'm going to bring it back around. A lot of you guys told me that you were concerned about your reading speed. You were concerned about running out of time. Well, if you're concerned about running out of time, why are you wasting time reading answer choices that you already know are wrong? When you think B is the answer, you circle B, because your attitude should be, I'm awesome. I've prepared for the ACT. If I think that B is the right answer, then it is, because I'm amazing. So just grab that choice confidently and move on with the ACT. Katie says, I got the hard one right and the easy one wrong, lol. That's awesome. Well, great job, you guys. I mean, that's a good place to be in, right? It's much better to be getting the hard ones right and the easy ones wrong, because you can much more easily fix your mistakes. And that's your goal, is to just fix as many mistakes as possible in practice so that they don't cost you points on test day. All right, everybody, nice work on these reading questions. Our last overview tonight will be the science overview. Science is always the fourth test of the ACT, and if you're not doing the optional writing section, it will be the last test. You will have 35 minutes to answer 40 questions, but it is a little bit different than reading, because reading had 4 passages and science has 7. Now, 7 does not divide nicely into 40, so you can tell that there's going to be a variable number of questions per passage. On average, though, you have about 5 minutes per passage, regardless of how many questions it has. So longer passages might take you more than 5 minutes, and shorter ones might take you less. Now, let me ask you something. Tell me, please, in the chat, if you've ever done any ACT science practice, how much science did you need to know to answer the questions? Chad asks, is Kaplan a university? There is a Kaplan University. We are totally separate from Kaplan University, so I don't know anything about them. They don't know anything about us. It's another group of folks. We are a test prep company. Science requires no science information. It's the craziest section of all time. It'd be like if the math test didn't require you knowing any math. That's pretty much it. You might see like a question or two that requires any kind of outside science knowledge. Otherwise, it's all about scientific reasoning, experiment analysis, basically just looking at data and making sure that the conclusions that you draw are valid. So it's a really cool test, because if science class is like literally your worst class in high school, that means absolutely nothing about how well you can perform on the science test of the ACT. You can slam dunk it. It's basically like more reading, but with science flavor. And that's excellent, because if you can think strategically, if you can think critically, then you can get these questions right, even if you have no idea, what's happening with the electrons in the d orbital or whatever the heck, right? None of that stuff matters. So give yourself, like in math, a chance to succeed, because your prior performance in school on this subject means nothing. Lauren's like, yeah, I wish math was like that. Oh, I know, that'd be kind of cool. That'd be kind of cool if there was a test that like didn't require any outside knowledge. Actually, if any of you end up becoming lawyers, to go to law school, you got to take a test called the LSAT, and that is a pure logic test with no outside information. So you might like that or you might not. It kind of depends. Now, let me teach you what you need to know, because what happens with science is that people get overwhelmed by these graphs. People get overwhelmed and they see all these charts and tables and data and things, and then like, it's so easy to get lost in it. Like, oh, when there's 10 crickets, it's 3 degrees Fahrenheit. But when there's 15 manta rays, it's 32.5 degrees Celsius. Oh, how fascinating. And you just sit there for like 3 minutes looking at all the data, and it's worth nothing. It's not helping your performance at all. So we want to have some surgical precision on the ACT. We want to know what's important to pay attention to. You want to pay attention to that stuff and nothing else, and then move on and start doing questions. So Here are the things that we need to pay attention to when we tackle a science passage that has graphs and tables. Variables, units, and trends. So variables are the things that change. All right. Now the x-axis will be the independent variable, and the y-axis will be the dependent variable. So I want to make sure you understand what these terms mean, just in case it comes up on the ACT, that it doesn't trip you up. The independent variable is what the scientists change directly, whereas the dependent variable is what the scientists measure. Let's say that I'm doing an experiment where I have some people study for the ACT, and then I have them take the ACT, and my goal in the experiment is to figure out to what extent studying for the ACT improves performance. So in this experiment, let me know in the chat, folks, what's the independent variable? What is the variable that I, as the scientist, directly control? I am directly controlling how much time someone spends studying. So in that experiment, time spent studying is the independent variable. Then the dependent variable is what I measure. What I'm measuring in my experiment is what score somebody got on the ACT after taking it. Usually, again, the x or the horizontal axis will be what the scientists set, and the y-axis will be what the scientists measure. Now, that's variables. Apart from that, we want to pay attention to units. So units tell you how each variable changes, how fast it changes, and what it is measured in. So these can be things like feet, inches, degrees Celsius, neutrinos, whatever. And you also want to look at the tick marks on the graph and see, like, okay, each time I move up a tick mark, how big of a jump is it? Is it 1 degree, 5 degrees, 10 degrees, 100, 1,000 degrees? You're going to read the data very differently depending on how big the tick marks jump. Last but not least, you pay attention to trends. Trends are the patterns that you can see emerging from the data. So as one variable goes up, what happens to the other variable? One goes up, the other goes up? Or is it like one goes up and the other goes down? Stuff like that. So that's what you want to look at. Don't sit there following, every single data point and looking at every single bend in the curve. Your goal is just to say, what are the variables? What are the units? And what is the general trend or the pattern I can take away? So I'm going to show you actually a really advanced passage set and question from a real ACT, and you can see how this strategic approach lets you get through it quickly and confidently. I'm not even going to bother reading you the text because it doesn't really make any difference. Let's take a look at just this graph and practice that approach to interpreting a graph. Let me know in the chat, folks, in this graph here, what is the independent variable, meaning the one directly controlled by the scientists? It is the temperature, because it's on the x-axis. So the researchers directly control temperature. Similarly, then, the dependent variable on the y-axis is solubility. Now, let me know in the chat, folks, what is the units? Or what are the units? I should teach English. I should probably speak that way. What are the units that we have in this data? Well, temperature is in degrees Celsius. And each tick mark is 20 degrees Celsius, which is kind of a lot. Solubility is kind of a weird unit. It is grams of solute per 100 grams of water. Now, you don't need to understand all of that when you read it, but it is important to look at that and say, okay, that's what the unit is. Grams of solute per 100 grams of water. There can be wrong answers on the ACT sometimes that are based on misinterpreting the units or assuming that the units are something when in fact they are something else. Okay, so we've got the variables, temperature and solubility. We've got the units, degrees Celsius and grams of solute per 100 grams of water. And now the last thing is trends or general patterns. Well, I'm not going to look at every single line in this picture, but in general it seems like as you increase the temperature, you also increase the solubility, although that seems to be different for different substances. Okay, so that's it. I'm not going to look at like, oh, how interesting. KNO3 at 80 degrees centigrade appears to be roughly in the 165 zone. No, don't waste time looking at data points. Just get the picture of the graph and then move on to some questions. There will be, of course, several questions per passage, but I will just do one with you, like the hardest one that we had for this one, and that will give you a really nice chance to practice some of your ACT skills. Here is question number 16. Approximately, or sorry, not question 16, question number 7. Approximately how many grams of NaNO3 could be dissolved in 25 grams of water at 90 degrees Celsius? Okay, so there's a few things to look for. NaNO3, whatever that is, I don't care what it is, doesn't make any difference to me, but that's what I'm looking for. And 90 degrees Celsius. Let's do that. So 90 degrees Celsius, NaNO3. Folks, when I look up that combination, tell me please in the chat, what solubility do I get? NaNO3 is this guy right there. And that curve intersects right on the line, rather conveniently actually. It is right at 160. Now, the units are 160 grams of solute per 100 grams of water. Let me know in the chat, folks. Does that give us the correct answer? 160 grams of solute per 100 grams of water. I see Christy's got it. Sophia, Chad, Dominique, excellent. Yes, Lauren, and Lauren with a Y, 2 Laurens, absolutely. This is not the final answer. It is a choice. There is choice D there, and that is a mistake that a lot of people are going to pick and get very frustrated by. And if you picked D here, as I see many of you did in the poll, don't feel bad. Be excited that you made a mistake here tonight with me and Beth and Katie and Danielle and Stephanie and Crystal. It's good to make mistakes now because it's better now than on test day. Great job here, Trey, Chad, Dominique, Jennifer, seeing that trap. What we have here is per 100 grams of water, but the question specifically has a quarter as much, only 25 grams of water. So if we only have a quarter of the water that is in the graph, that means our answer is only going to be a quarter of what we found. So that means that, of course, guys, you guys knew this had to happen, right? We're going to end on choice B for Boris. How could we end on any other choice? It had to be. It was destiny. Let's circle that choice and move on with the ACT. Now, I see Katie says I would have chosen that. Brandon says, dang. Crystal's letting me know that we had as much as 86% voting for choice D. This was a super hard problem, one of the hardest science questions that has ever appeared on the ACT. But I want you to notice that you can do this one. You can do this. If you just remember to pay attention to units, you're not going to make that mistake. You got it out of your system in a practice event, and now on the real ACT, when your competition is going to make that mistake for the first time, totally unknowing, you're going to be on the lookout for it, and you're going to get it right. This is how you improve your score, is by getting excited about mistakes, learning from them, and then getting it right on test day. All right, folks, great job in our practice here. It's been such a pleasure working with this group. I hope I can see some of you in our classes because this was one of the best practice events that we've had. The participation was amazing, so thank you guys so much, not only for coming, but for coming and paying attention and playing ball. Now, if you're thinking, hey, that was kind of nifty, I maybe wouldn't mind doing a whole program along these lines. The event that you saw tonight is basically exactly the same as what the real ACT Online Prep Live program is. It's a teacher on camera, it's slides, and we work through problems and teach you strategies. There's a lot more behind the scenes as well. So when you sign up for the program, you get a lot of stuff. So there's official practice from the makers of the ACT, which means that all the questions that you're doing are real questions that appeared on the ACT. There's no other way to get that. So any other prep program that you do, you're doing questions that someone else wrote to try to emulate ACT questions. Here you get practice officially from the test makers. You also get live teachers. You get live instruction, and a lot of you guys were actually asking, are there any recordings? What if I miss a class? Yeah, you can also look at on-demand instruction, meaning we record our best lessons, and then when you want to see that lesson, you can see basically like an exemplar of one of the best times that lesson has ever been taught. So whether you can attend a session live or you want to watch it on demand, you can get a really, really nice set of instruction materials for those topics. We do help with study plans. I know that's something a lot of students are concerned about. You have access to teachers through a moderated forum, so you can chat with us and ask us questions and we'll get back to you. And so we can help you make a study plan. We can help you figure out what to do between now and test day to achieve your goals. And in general, as you're like working on homework and stuff, you can post questions to the board and get questions back from Kaplan's ACT instructors. So it's a really great personalized program where you get a lot of instruction live, a teacher helping you understand stuff, and a whole team of teachers working behind the scenes to make sure that you understand what you need to understand to get a really good score. Now, I want to say something here that some of you guys might be surprised by. Is anyone here getting a fee waiver for the ACT? Like, let me know in the chat if you qualified for a fee waiver, which means that you got to take the ACT for free. I want to ask this because this should be a no-brainer. If you have a fee waiver for the ACT, you qualify for this program totally for free. And that is really awesome. I just don't understand why everybody just doesn't do that, because it is totally free. It's a live prep class. I mean, that is just unbelievably amazing in my mind. I mean, a lot of effort has to go into making a live preparation program taught by human beings, and to have that be available affordably is one thing. To have it be free just blows my mind to this day. So please, if you have a fee waiver, sign up for this and take advantage of some of like the best ACT teachers in the world who will come on and teach you the material so you don't have to learn it all by yourself from a book. And I see a few of you did. So Megan did, and Catherine and Sage. That's amazing. Please just sign up. It's totally free. There's no catch. All right. It's not like we take your email address and like, you know, give it to spam phishing companies. Like, no, it really is just the ACT is awesome. And they give this program for free to students who qualify for a fee waiver. So please just do it. Now, for those of you who have not qualified for a fee waiver and you're wondering like, okay, what do I get with this and how much does it cost? You get a lot of stuff for the price. You get over 2,000 practice questions, a lot of practice tests, 2 that are full length, 4 that are short form and individualized. So you really just cannot run out of practice questions, and whatever it is that's bugging you about the ACT, you can learn it and master it before you take your real exam. And there's a lot of live instruction. I mean, this is not a short class. There's over 28 hours of time that you get with a live teacher like me tonight, taking you through all the material that you could possibly ever need to know for the ACT. So there really just is no place that I personally know of where you get more live instruction, more practice content outside of class, more human support outside of class, all standing behind you, making sure that you succeed on the test. And one of the nice things about this is that this is also just like the most affordable ACT preparation that is live that you will ever find. So it is for a 6-week subscription, a little under $100. And for a 12-week subscription, so if you want to have access to it for longer, it's a little less than double that. And you can also do a 24-week subscription for, again, a little more than double if you really need to prep over a long stretch of time. For most folks, the 6-week subscription is enough, and that's like not that much more than the price of a good prep book. If you look at other preparation options, to have a live teacher teach you the material is going to be significantly more expensive than this. And considering that the ACT can open the door to better colleges and scholarships, I am honestly just mind blown to this day that it is possible to get in 2017 live human instruction at a price that is this low. So I'm going to leave you guys with this. I hope that you will sign up and take advantage of this program to prepare for the ACT. If not, if you're going to go it alone, I'm still going to wish you the best of luck. And I still am very grateful that you came here, that you participated, and that you worked hard in this event to take charge of your future, take command of your ACT score, and ensure your own success in the future. So thank you guys so much for coming today. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that we'll see you in the Online Prep Live program with the ACT and Kaplan. And above all else, I wish you the best of luck in your preparation and the best of luck on test day. Take care, everybody.